Everyone loves a good underdog story. In the mental battlefield of tennis, there are plenty of players who have overcome the odds to make headlines. How did one Swede play mental games to beat Rafael Nadal in a historic match? And who actually apologized to the crowd after beating the world number one? Stay tuned to find out as we have a look at the biggest tennis upsets of all time. First up, John Millman and Roger Federer. There have always been a steady stream of top Australian players in tennis. Rod Laver, Leighton Hewitt, and now Nick Kyrgios all come to mind. One name that doesn't stand out is John Millman. His career high ranking is 33 and has only won one ATP title, but sometimes the stars align for an upset from the most unlikely of places. In 2018, his fortune started to turn. Millman's moment was at the US Open when he spent more than 3 hours in a 4-set tiebreaker against one of the best in history. It was the fourth round, and he was up against Roger Federer, who at the time was ranked number 2 in the world. Of course, the Swiss master was expected to make easy work of the Australian, but if he did, it wouldn't be in this video. Federer had never lost to a player outside the top 50 at the tournament, but on that hot, sweaty night in New York's Arthur Ashe Stadium, that would change. Millman recovered from a set down to win 3 sets in a row and score his first victory over a top 10 player. After the win, he was gracious about his opponent. He described Federer as one of his heroes and admitted the Fed wasn't at his best that night. The tennis world was shocked by the upset, but Federer not so much. Before the match, the former number 1 revealed that they had trained together in Switzerland before, and that Millman had all the respect from us top players in the locker room. Next, Nick Kyrgios versus Rafael Nadal. This was the match that you saw young Australian Nick Kyrgios gain worldwide attention. He had previously been ranked world number 1 in juniors, but he was still flying under the radar in 2014. Kyrgios had been knocked out of the Australian Open in the second round after getting a wild card entry, and his performances throughout the year earned him another wild card, this time to the most prestigious tournament in tennis, Wimbledon. The tennis world wasn't ready for what was coming next. He breezed through the first round before facing the 13th seed Richard Gasquet, who he managed to defeat in a 5-set battle that went down to the wire. 2 rounds later, and he was up against world number 1 Rafael Nadal in what most expected to be a cakewalk for the Spaniard. Kyrgios looked like a seasoned veteran out on center court, despite it being his first Wimbledon tournament as a senior. He blasted aces past Nadal and dazzled with showmanship when he hit a winner between his legs in what was called the shot of the year. Nadal was able to claw 1 set from the 19-year-old, but in the end couldn't do much to stop the momentum as Kyrgios rose to the occasion and won in 4 sets. The audience was absolutely stunned and could feel that a star was born. It didn't matter that he lost in the quarterfinals to Milos Raonic. Nick had already made history, and the fact that he seemed to do it so effortlessly made the performance even more impressive. And now, Roberta Vinci versus Serena Williams. Serena Williams. Ever heard of her? You know, 23 Grand Slams, former world number 1, and probably the greatest female tennis player of all time. Can you imagine finding out that you were matched up against her in the next round of a Grand Slam? Well, that's what Italian player Roberta Vinci was faced with in 2015. Even worse, it was in Serena's home tournament at the US Open. But what Vinci lacked in popularity, she made up for in experience. At 32 years old, she was the oldest first-time semifinalist in the tournament's history. She was ranked 43rd in the world and was taking on the world number 1. It was truly a David vs. Goliath story, and early in the match, it looked as though Goliath would be coming out on top. Vinci lost the first set 2-6 before bouncing back and winning 2 sets in a row and completing what some outlets called one of the biggest sports upsets of all time. In her post-match interview, she apologized to the American people and said, "Sorry for Serena, for the Grand Slam, but today is my day." Meanwhile, Serena wasn't in the mood to talk to the media. She said that she wouldn't be answering any questions about how she must be feeling. The crowd loves to see an upset, but the favorite rarely enjoys being the one giving it out. Vinci was defeated by fellow Italian Flavia Pennetta in the finals, but her performance earned her a spot in the top 20 and some worldwide fame. Up next, how did playing mind games lead to the biggest upset in Nadal's career? And who sent Pete Sampras into retirement with a shocking win at Wimbledon? So don't go anywhere. And now, Denis Istomin versus Novak Djokovic. If there's one tournament that Novak Djokovic loves to play, it's the Australian Open. Back when he wasn't banned from entering the country, Noel was the king down under. Between 2011 and 2016, 2009, he won 5 out of 6 titles there and made himself a favorite virtually every year. But there was a young player from Uzbekistan ready to step up to the challenge. In 2017, Denis Istomin was ranked 117th in the world, but got himself a wild card to the Australian Open. After making it to the second round, he pulled off the performance of his career. He came back from a set down to stun Djokovic in a tense 5-set battle. The match went on for almost 5 hours, and Istomin earned every point. It was the first time that Novak had lost to a player outside the top 100 at a Grand Slam, but the Serbian was gracious in defeat. He said, "All the credit to Denis for playing amazingly. He deserved to win. Djokovic was world number 2 at the time, and Istomin's victory put him on the map. Unfortunately for Istomin, he hasn't shown that kind of form since then, and has slipped to 373 in the ATP rankings. And at 35, it looks like his time might have already passed, but he will always be remembered for disrupting what probably would have been 6 consecutive Australian Opens for Djokovic. That's something to be proud of." Next, Robin Soderling versus Rafael Nadal. Popping up on the list again is Rafael Nadal. He may be one of the greatest players to grace the court, but he has also been the big name in some of the biggest upsets in history. But this next one is a match that Nadal would really rather forget. It was 2009 in the 4th round of the French Open. Even in 2009, he had already won the previous 4 titles. It was unthinkable that the top seed wouldn't make it to the finals. But this wasn't the kind of rivalry that Nadal and Federer shared. No, this was more personal. Swedish player Robin Soderling had a long-running feud with Nadal, which reached a new level at the 2007 Wimbledon Open, when Soderling openly mocked Nadal's famous long-winded routines. When asked about his opponent making fun of him, Nadal said, "Not nice." That's why at the 2009 French Open, there was still bad blood between the two. Nadal was, of course, the heavy favorite, but Soderling had already proven that he could put the defending champion off his game. He took his chances well and beat Nadal in 4 sets in probably the biggest match of his career. Soderling says that he's asked about it all the time, especially because Rafa has gone on to win 10 more French Open titles. But the Swede guarantees an upset like that will never happen again. And now we have George Bastel versus Pete Sampras. In terms of rankings, this next one is up there as one of the biggest upsets of all time. To one of the sport's greatest, Pete Sampras, it took something special, especially at a Grand Slam like Wimbledon. But in 2002, Sampras was getting to the end of his career. In fact, it would be the year that he retired for good after 63 titles and held the spot of world number 1 for more than 5 years. At the end of 2001, he closed out the year as number 10 in the world. For Sampras, this was pretty low. It was the lowest he had been in 12 years. Imagine feeling like being top 10 in the world was a sign to retire. But that's how good Pistol Pete was in his heyday. So fast forward to 2002, and Sampras is playing his last Wimbledon tournament, whether he knew it or not. It was the second round, and his opponent was a relatively unknown Swiss man by the name of George Bastel, ranked 145 in the world. What made his match up against Sampras even more unlikely was that he wasn't even supposed to be there. He had lost his final qualifying round, but had stepped in to replace another injured player. Lucky for him, because it would be the biggest win of his career when he bested Sampras in 5 sets. Following the match, Sampras said that he wasn't at his best, but Bastel was still pleased with himself, saying, "It's a nice story, isn't it?" Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next one.